Okay, good evening and aloha. Hey, there we go, nice. So my name is Milo Spindt. Some of you may know me because I campaigned for county council last year, and Felicia beat me out by 351 votes.
But he was
Congratulations.
And he's great too.
Yeah.
That's
So anyway, my field of expertise, I've been in real estate for 18 years. I was first licensed in Hawaii in 2001. And I've done real estate in Hawaii. I've also practiced real estate, was licensed in Nevada, and I've been licensed as a broker in Washington State as well. So I'm familiar with some different laws in different states. Hawaii and Kauai, we have some very unique zoning laws, and specifically to Kauai. In the state of Hawaii, the counties are given a lot of zoning authority over the county jurisdictions. My background also includes affordable housing. I've been volunteering on affordable housing boards and committees for about 12, 13 years now. And I was appointed as the Kauai representative to the Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation, HHFDC, Board of Directors by the governor in 2015, and I'm currently serving this term as the chairperson. If you want, there's some flyers in the back. Hey, and there's Milani from, this is the president of Kauai Habitat for Humanity, one of our awesome affordable housing providers here in Hawaii, or on Kauai. So I will preface this by saying I am not a planning professional. I am not an attorney. I am a real estate broker. And so what I'm going to do is talk about the laws and give you my interpretation of them. I did, however, run this by Kaina Hall, the planning director of the County of Kauai. He had me fix a few things and add a few things on just so I made sure to cover everything. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this, and at the end of it, I'm going to have you guys ask some questions, and then I actually want to ask you about your property and give you some examples of what is possible. We can't cover all of the details of your property because you probably don't know all of the things like your zoning, if you're R4, R2, R1, if you're R6. But we can try and give you some good examples of where to start. And then if you want to follow up with me afterwards via email, I'm happy to help you figure things out. So the real purpose of this, and I think on Facebook I titled this, "The County of Kauai Wants You to Build an ARU, ADU, or guest house." And having a council person here is wonderful because a lot of these have been oriented, and there's a handful of bills. There's 6 bills that address ARUs and 1 bill that addresses the guest houses that are currently going through the planning process to work on some fixes. The ARU, the 6 ordinances that were read for first, that wasn't even first reading, that was just to receive it, and to be referred to the Planning Commission are about addressing the costs for the ARUs and trying to come up with a means by which, if you keep your unit as an affordable rental, they're going to reduce the cost and help you get that unit built, essentially. The other bill that's being worked on right now, and I think it's the Planning Commission again, is in relation to guest houses. Guest houses, you see them a lot on ag. They're limited to 500 square feet and no kitchens, right? It can't be a rental at all. You can have guests stay in it. You're not allowed to rent it, not short-term, not long-term, not at all. It's just for guests to stay in. So they have a current proposal, and the current proposal allows you to put a kitchen in that. It doesn't change the square footage. It allows you to put a kitchen in it, and then it allows you to do long-term rental on that. So I'm going to go through this from top to bottom and front to back, and then we'll go over some samples. So a guest house. This is directly from the statutes. A guest house means a building with a floor area of no more than 500 square feet, contains no kitchen, and is used for dwelling purposes by guests, and is located on a parcel of land of at least 9,000 square feet and contains 1 or more dwellings. So this is one of the ones that can be done on ag land as well as in residential zone properties, okay? This can be done on either currently, and we'll get into this down below, no kitchens, no renting, just guests. An additional dwelling unit, or an ADU, is only allowed currently on residential lots. There is a part of the code that allows for ADUs on ag land that has sunsetted. If you had a permit for an ADU on ag land, there is a process that you can go to maintain that so that you don't lose that density on your property. But if you buy a property that is ag land that does not have an ADU on it, you cannot currently get an ADU on ag land, the new permit for that, okay? So we're going to talk only about ADUs on residentially zoned lots. So notwithstanding other provisions, for any residential zone lot where only one single-family dwelling is permitted, one additional single-family dwelling, attached or detached, may be developed and provided. Okay, so this can be attached. You can convert your garage. There's all kinds of options you can do with an ADU. With an ADU, you can CPR it and you can sell it separately. We'll get into more detail down the road. So last March, this was added to our cadre, the ARU, the additional, not affordable, but additional rental unit, means a rental unit that includes a kitchen, bedrooms, and bathroom facilities, may be attached or detached from a dwelling that is used for the purpose of a long-term rental. This cannot be short-term rented regardless of what zoning you're in. You can be in a visitor destination area like Poipu or Princeville, and you may not add an ARU and use it as a short-term rental. So this supersedes your VDA zoning, okay? When built with an existing residential dwelling or attached to one, the two units together shall consist of a multi-family dwelling. I'm not going to go into what a multi-family dwelling is. There's a definition for what that is under our CZO, but we're not going to touch on that today. So I'm going to go back and touch on guest houses. Guest houses may be built on a lot with at least 9,000 square feet of land that has no more than one dwelling. So if you have two houses on your property already, you cannot add a guest house. You can not add a guest house. Guest houses may be built on ag and residentially zoned properties, but are limited to structures of no more than 500 square feet. So a typical guest house is a 20 by 25 structure. They're usually pretty simple, a bedroom and a small living space and a bathroom. There can't be a stove out on the lanai. There cannot be a hot plate. There cannot be anything resembling a kitchen in the unit whatsoever. You're not supposed to have a counter. You're not supposed to have cabinets. Nothing like that, okay? But there's a bill, 2735, that has currently gone through the county council and has been referred to the planning commission right now that would allow guest houses to have a kitchen and to be rented out only as a long-term rental. Okay, again, we're targeting the need for rental properties, right? Any rental property, even if it's a market rate rental property, helps us because it frees up some of our affordable rental properties for the people who really need the affordable rental units. Bill 27, I think I already covered this part. It should be headed up, this is what kind of had me add, that it is currently the planning commission. They are making some modifications apparently to the bill as it was originally written, and should be headed back up to the council sometime in the next 3 months, so keep an eye on that. Nothing specifically is saying that guest houses cannot be CPR'd and sold as a separate property. Okay, so a CPR, you can CPR a chair. You can take a chair, form a corporation, and sell half the chair to someone and half the chair to someone else. Or you could put it into 4 pieces and sell, I don't know who's going to buy it, but you can CPR a chair, okay? It is a condominium property regime. It is a corporation, and you're essentially selling a share of limited interest in a property or a chair, a microwave, whatever you want to sell it in. So there's nothing saying that a guest house cannot be CPR'd. But without a kitchen, it's not a living unit. So you can't really live in it. So currently, this is something that I'm sure the Planning Commission will pick up on, and I'm sure the council will pick up on. With the addition of a kitchen, it may be possible that you can build a guest house on your property, CPR it, and sell it. Now it's limited to 500 square feet, so you're not going to get a lot for it. But you could, in theory, sell it. The idea, I think that the council is going after, though, is that we create more rental inventory, not necessarily more sales inventory. So I'm pretty sure that's going to get tweaked. So moving down to an additional dwelling unit, ADU. This has been around for a while. They do exist on ag land. They do exist on residential property. This is the one we see most commonly, where you have two houses on a lot that are sold separately, a 2-unit CPR or a 4-unit CPR. At least one of those is an ADU. And I'll go through the rules of what an ADU is. For the purpose of this presentation, we're going to focus only on residential zoned lots. Talk a little bit about being on ag land. Currently, it doesn't allow for ADU permits on ag zoned properties. There is no specific size limitation to an ADU. If you have a 900 square foot plantation house on your property and you want to add an ADU to your property, you can build a 3,000 square foot ADU. There's nothing saying that the house has to be bigger than the ADU or subservient or anything like that, okay? Lost my place.
You're right here.
So, okay, however, we are limited by total lot coverage ratios. So what that means is if you have a 10,000 square foot lot, with an ADU, you're limited to a 50% lot coverage ratio. So that means your total hard surface on the property, now this includes driveways, this includes fence posts, this includes anything that doesn't absorb water. Okay, so lot coverage isn't just your house footprint. There's a lot of other things that are added onto that. You have a total lot coverage ratio of 50%. So you can fit as big a house on there as you can with setbacks. So you have property line setbacks. And if you go up, you have to be set back further from your property line. So a single story can be within 5 or 6 feet of your property line. The second story, it's half the distance to the plate, to the top plate. So if you go up another 10 feet, you got to go another 5 feet back. So what you'll see sometimes, if someone goes vertical, is the first floor will be 5 foot setback, and then the second floor you'll see it stepped back and then up, because that has to be another 5 foot setback to go up another story. That doesn't count in your lot coverage ratio because they're only looking at the footprint on the ground. So that's one way to achieve a higher density on your property. On to the back. So we talked about ADUs are commonly sold as separate homes. You may short-term rent if the property is in a visitor destination area. I don't want you to do that, right? We're trying to fix our rental problem. We're not trying to bring more tourists in and give them more places to stay. You may long-term, or you may sell the unit. You can sell it attached or detached. You just have to have an attorney do your CPR documents spelling out the rules. There is a tax break if your rent fits within the county real property tax affordable rental limits, and you must apply for the tax break, and you have to go through a compliance process, turning in your lease agreements and everything, and it's an annual re-compliance in order to get the tax deduction or tax break on that. So the newest addition to the density, and the reason the ARU was created, was to get higher density. So one of the things that we're looking at is we want to get more density in our urban cores where we have infrastructure to support it. So we have roads, rather than doing a greenfield development, which is where we go and take a farm field and we turn it into housing. We want existing housing. If you have one house on your property, we really want you to have 2. And if you live in Lihue, we really want you to have like 4. No joke, and we'll get into that in a minute. So this was signed into law in March of 2018, so just last year. Councilmember Luke Evslin was one of the first. I posted on Facebook that he was the first, and he corrected me and he was the second. So I changed it to one of the first to go through the process. He bought, while he was campaigning last year, he was insane. He was doing his master's degree. He was running his own business, having a baby. His wife gave birth, I think, the night of the election, and he bought a house and was remodeling it all during the campaign last year.
And his business.
Yeah, he's had a business with the business partners. So anyway, he went through the house he bought had an unpermitted rental unit in it. And so what he decided to do was be one of the first people who applied to convert his unpermitted rental unit into a permitted rental unit. So he went through the application process, and the result was there are 6 ordinances that were, 6 bills that were proposed on actually this last Wednesday that look at how to fix some of the fee structures. Because the intent, and I was at a lot of the conversation about the ARU and talked a lot with Mason and with Arthur Brune, who worked on the ARU together. And the intent of it was really to provide additional density at a low cost. And through Councilman Evelyn's process, he found out that the permitting fees were high. The water department wanted to charge him a full FRC charge of $14,800 without adding a meter to the property. They weren't going to change anything on his water. They just wanted him to pay the fee, and it was already existing. So that's still in negotiation. I think they ended up charging him a $4,000 fee, so a much reduced fee. They don't have specific rules out on that yet. We're hoping that they come up with that. They're talking about a different fee structure if it's inside of an existing structure versus if you build a new structure. They might have a different fee structure if you're adding on additional square footage on the property. We'll see what the water board does. They can be a little bit of a wild card. So one ARU can be added to as an accessory to an existing unit. That means if you are on a CPR property and you are living in an ADU and your neighbor is living in the house, both of you can add ARUs. So there's some, the maximum square footage limitation is 800 square feet. We do still have a lot coverage ratio limitation, but they decided because they really wanted us to add these rental units onto our properties, they gave a 10% density bonus if you add an ARU. So instead of a 50% lot coverage ratio, now you have a 60% lot coverage ratio, and just that little bit can help you add on that unit. ARUs are specifically not allowed to be CPR'd. It's written into the law. You have to sign a bunch of stuff saying this will not be CPR'd. You cannot CPR it off. It is not a separate unit. It turns your single family home into a multi-family dwelling. They don't have to be attached. They can be detached, but it still is a multi-family property then. It cannot, again, by statute, cannot be used as a vacation rental. It is only for long-term rental. Now, there's nothing saying that the property has to be an affordable rental, but again, in some of the bills that were introduced, there are some incentives if you meet the affordability guidelines on the long-term rental to help you reduce the cost. So they're going to waive your sewer fees, or they're proposing to. They're proposing to waive sewer fees, permitting fees, and then they're looking at possibly reducing the water fee and also maybe paying for that through the housing fund, special fund, and then a 0% loan or something. Anyway.
And I have another one up my sleeve that
Oh,
I'm
cool.
wanting to have, see if we can't get housing funds to amortize or loan, so if it costs
To build.
$30,000 to put in your septic or whatever else, because a lot of times people just can't cough up that money,
Yeah.
but they can cough up a solution with some help.
Yeah. And we're going to talk a little bit about.
Would help with the septic system?
I'm gonna hold you up, Dougie, because we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to some of the limitations and some of the things that are outside of these rules that we have to resolve. Water in, water out. Those are the two big issues, right? Dealing with the Board of Water for the permitting fees for the FRC charge, and then dealing with the wastewater is another issue because you're limited. That can limit your density. So. So really the intent of this, the county really wants us to build these. I mean, really, really, really wants us to build these because it will help. This is a way that you can help with our rental problems here in Kauai, right? And whether or not you live in Omao or if you live in Lihue, now we want to see them in Lihue because it helps with our traffic issues. But if you live in Omao and you can add a rental unit there, every rental unit helps provide rentals. And the more we have available, the lower the prices will go for all rentals, right? It's a competitive market. So all of the above densities, the ARU, ADU, and cottages are subject to a few very important rules. There has to be sufficient water supply as determined by the Board of Water. That can be a guessing game. It really can be. They're not, they're working on clarifying how that works. Hopefully they'll get that a little more organized, but they are working on that. They are working on additional surface water treatment, but there is a bill at the legislature right now that just got killed that may unfortunately limit the surface water diversions. And that's a complicated issue because in-stream flow standards, but we also need the water to provide housing. So that's a very complicated issue, but that may have a negative effect on our ability to build housing, especially affordable housing. If you are on sewer, okay, so if you're in Lihue, with a few exceptions, you're probably on sewer. You can put 20 bedrooms in your property, so long as you don't exceed your lot coverage ratios. If you're on septic, wastewater is controlled by the State Department of Health. If you're on a septic system or on a cesspool, these are two very important things. First of all, if you're on a cesspool and you want to add any additional square footage, you will have to convert from a cesspool to a septic system. You must. We all have to convert from cesspools to septic systems by 2050 anyway. So the Department of Health is using the addition of any interior square footage as a trigger to do a conversion. Now, it's not cheap. I did one on my own property. The challenge of not doing it on a raw property is you don't have a lot of room to store the dirt. So I paid, I think the system itself was maybe $20,000. I paid almost $10,000 hauling dirt back and forth, right? I had to haul the dirt away because I didn't have any place on my property to store the dirt. So they had to take it to a yard, dump it, come back, take more out. And then when they finished the system, did the inspection, they had to bring the dirt back. And so I had to pay to truck it off the property and I had to pay to bring it back. So it depends, a lot of it depends on your property, how much space you have. But this is an issue that if you're not on sewer, Hanapepe's on sewer, Waimea is on sewer, Elieli is on sewer. If you're not on sewer, this is a limiting factor. So you can have up to 5 bedrooms for every septic system on your property. You're limited to 1 5-bedroom septic system for every 10,000 square feet of land. So roughly a quarter acre, you're allowed 1 5-bedroom treatment system. So you can do a 3-bedroom and a 2-bedroom. You can do a 4-bedroom and a 1-bedroom. You can do a 5-bedroom and nothing else. For better or worse, all of these density bonuses can be nullified. If you live in Pikake, the covenants, codes, and restrictions, otherwise known as your C, C, and Rs, in your development can absolutely nullify everything. So if you live in Pikake, unless you live on a lot that is more than 10,000 square feet, you may not add an ADU, you may not add an ARU, you can't add any of that. Your CCNRs are your most restrictive covenants, and they supersede state law and county law when it comes to restrictions. Okay, so what is right for your property? I was going to come up with some examples, but I'd really love to use specific examples from people's properties. I can dream up stuff, and I can put it up here. But what I'd really like to do is use a specific example and come up with it. So for our purposes, we're not going to deal with ag properties. We're not really looking at increasing density on ag properties. We really want to increase density in the urban core. All urban zone properties are residentially zoned or some form of commercial zoning that allows for multifamily density. So anyone live on a residential property? You live on a Kilauea.
I do.
Yeah.
I have a 13,000 square foot
Okay.
property
Perfect.
with a 1,500 square foot house.
Okay.
It's long and skinny.
Long and skinny. Okay, challenging.
Longer than it is wide.
Okay, and it's 13,000 square feet?
And I have a 1,500 square foot
And whereabouts is it on your property?
plantation house about right here.
Okay.
And it was a carport there. And I happen to have,
And is your driveway paved?
my driveway is, like a carport comes out this way, it is
Okay.
paved.
Okay, that's important because that's lot coverage, right? So if it's paved driveway, that's lot coverage. Now you can, to get higher lot coverage, you can take the concrete or your asphalt out and you can do grasscrete, and then it's an absorbing surface and no longer covers in your lot coverage ratios. Right, Dougie?
Is
that right?
50%.
Well, that's not part of your, it's not 100% though, right? Okay.
Or you go to gravel, then it's no cover.
No coverage. So if you take out your concrete, and put in gravel, you add 0. If you do the grasscrete, then you're at 50% rather than 100% coverage. Dougie does plans and helps people calculate these things. So
I have a significant shack in the back that's about 220 square feet.
okay.
Is that permitted?
No,
I just trying to be funny.
no, I don't know, but I'm sure it wasn't. I mean, it's a plantation building. I mean, the whole property is a plantation.
Plantation property.
Single wall construction. The
Yeah.
thing was built in like 1950.
So here's an important question. Do you know your zoning? You're in Kilauea town, so I imagine you're R4.
I would imagine I'm R4.
Okay, so we're going to assume R4. So R stands for residential, 4 stands for the number of units per acre. So that means you can have one house on a quarter acre. So she's got 13,000 square feet, which means,
It's a third of an acre.
huh?
It's a third of an acre.
No, 15,000. Yeah, for our purposes, it's not going to matter.
Okay.
Yeah. So do you have a cesspool or do you have a septic system?
That's
Okay, so
I've
she
never had to pump ever.
has a 6-foot wide hole in the ground where everything goes, right? Everything, solids and liquids.
And my plants grow like crazy.
Yeah, and the grass around this hole grows wonderfully. It's all green.
Bananas, all the trees, yeah.
Okay, so probably R4 zoning. What we can do here, so now what's our limitation? What's our 2 big limitations? Water in, water out, okay? So first thing we got to find out is there sufficient water in Kilauea to add another unit? Because in theory, it may be feasible to add an ADU to this property, right? We got enough space. Lot coverage may be an issue. We may have to convert the concrete driveway into a gravel driveway or a grasscrete driveway. But we have a possibility for an ADU. And total maximum density, what we could do is we could actually put an ADU maybe in the back here. We do a CPR. We can add an ARU and an ARU. But we're limited by
Water.
wastewater.
And
So wastewater is going to limit our 4 units. If you were on sewer, you could have a total of 4 units there. Okay, so if you were in Lihue and you have the same situation, you can have an ADU with an ARU. You can have a house with an ARU, because you're all hooked to sewer. You can CPR it, 2 duplexes, and you get 4 units of rental on a property that's zoned for 1. Okay, so these are all intended to increase density. She is not. She is in Kilauea. They're having water problems.
And so here's the interesting thing, and it's true for a whole lot of my neighbors, because a lot of the people who live on my street actually work for the plantation. And it's like aunties with no children anymore at home or anything. So 4-bedroom house with 1 person in it. And like my boys have grown up. I'm not old enough to be on my own yet, but they are. So it's like largely me and whichever houseless friends are kind of can find refuge with me for a bit. But so like there's 1 person in that house. That house was designed to maybe have a family of 5 in it, you know? So that's the thing that becomes troublesome if you have to get.
So quick question, Felicia. I'm going to bring you back to task here.
Okay.
How many bedrooms do you have?
3.
You have 3 bedrooms. Okay, this is an important question because first of all, in order to add anything to this property, attached or detached, we need to convert from a cesspool into a septic. Okay, and so a septic is going to be a tank, and it's going to be a leach field. And she may have enough room here with 13,000 square feet that she can do all of her dirt work and storage on the property. Likelihood is the soil is pretty good up there. The absorption is pretty good up there. Shouldn't be too big. So we can get this up to now a 5 unit, right? So we can go, we've got 10,000 square feet. We don't have 20,000 square feet. So we're limited to 1 septic system. So we could add an ADU here, anywhere on this property, we could CPR it. We can add an ARU, okay? The limiting factor for this isn't going to be our septic. It's not going to be our water out. The limiting factor for this is going to be our water in. So unfortunately in Kilauea right now, they have a water delivery issue. So they don't have a water capacity issue. They have a lot of storage capacity. They have good wells in the area, but the size of the line is too small. And so they can't transmit enough from the tanks to the housing development. And so a lot of the development in Kilauea is limited specifically because of water delivery, not storage and not source. So that's one of the limitations here. So the best option on this property, because the Department of Water, again, a little vague, may or may not say that, hey, you can add an ARU. Maybe you can convert your carport into an ARU.
For the shack.
Or the shack into an ARU, because they're existing and it's not going to require additional water consumption in theory. Again, Department of Water, that's a really vague area. You're going to have to get an opinion from them directly on that, okay? But even if we do a conversion, this will have to be converted, okay? So that's a good example, residentially zoned, but septic system, okay? So who has another one? Anyone live in Lihui? Anyone live Hanapepe? Okay.
My parents, they live in
Puhi?
sewer.
Okay.
Their land size is right over 6,000 square feet.
Okay, small lot.
Small lot. It's the Puhi subdivision right across Mark's Place.
Okay. Okay.
Building size 1,700.
1,700 square foot house. Okay. So, and we have sewer, right? So we got a line that goes out and a sewer transmission line. Okay. So this is water out. Okay. And we have water in. Okay. I'll put a meter here. So with a 6,000 square foot lot, so the first thing we're going to check is always water, right? So is there additional water capacity in Lihui? Limiting factor in Lihui right now, we just talked about it, surface water treatment plant. That's all a little bit in limbo because of the bill that's going through or not going through in the legislature. And so we may or may not have additional capacity. They were trying to expand capacity for surface water treatment, which is how a lot of Lihui is supplied with their household water. But because of this bill that's not getting passed through, we may not be able to expand our capacity. So we're going to have to look at how we're going to solve that if that bill doesn't go through. We're going to have to look for other source of water. So water may or may not be an issue. Let's assume that it's not an issue, okay? Let's say that, hey, they say we can put another water meter in there, okay? If it's not, if we don't do an ARU, if we wanted to do an ADU, our limiting factor, because we have sewer, we can build as many bedrooms on here. How many bedrooms is it, Crystal?
It is 3 bedrooms and they added a family room.
Okay, and how many square feet, I'm sorry?
About
1,700, okay. 3-bed. You can have a 3-bed and 10 bathroom. For whatever reason, the Department of Health only cares about the number of bedrooms you have. It makes no sense. We've talked to them about, hey, shouldn't it be the number of faucets and toilets that you have, not the number of bedrooms that you have? But that's how they determine it. We don't get to make their rules. That's done at the state level. So, okay, let's assume we have water in. Okay, so we can add an ARU here. We could add an ADU here as well. The limiting factor in this particular case is going to be lot coverage ratio, right? Because we're dealing with a 6,000 square foot lot. We have a minimum setback of 5 feet. 15, thank you, Dougie. And 10, right? Okay. So does anyone know why we have these setbacks? Dougie can't answer. Does anyone know what other hat I used to wear in the county?
Don't have a fire.
Uh-huh. So I used to be a firefighter. And the reason we have setbacks is because of things like the Boston fire and the Chicago fires. When houses are next to each other, it's easier for the fire to spread to the next adjacent building. So you can have zero lot lines. So we see more in commercial zones. We see zero lot line construction where they build on the property line. But typically that construction is metal or concrete, right? So there's less of a risk of fire spread. So that's why we have setbacks, is to help with that. And it allows the firefighters to get around the property, come into the back, put out the fires in the back and things like that. Okay, so we could do an ARU here. We can add on. We don't have to worry about sewer because sewer, right, we got as much capacity there. We could do an ADU. We could CPR an ADU. What is another limiting factor we might have in this case because we're in a relatively new development? Relatively new. Covenants, our CC&Rs, right? So our CC&Rs.
I have a question.
Yep.
I thought ADUs got stopped, like they got grandfathered in, the rest of them, but that you couldn't do them again.
Only on ag.
Oh, okay.
So the limitation on ADUs, so when they did the ADU bill, there was a sunset on it. They repealed the sunset on the residential part. They left the sunset in on the ag part. And the thinking for it at the time, one of my work associates at Kauai Realty is Jesse Fukushima, who helped create that and then set up the sunsets and everything, was that they didn't want more gentleman estates filling in our agricultural areas. They wanted to keep farming alive. And rather than turning our farmlands into housing developments, we wanted to see those remain open space. They decided to keep it in the residential areas and the urban areas because we wanted to see increased density where we have more services like sewer and water available. Okay? So we could add an ARU here. There's probably not enough density to do, I mean, in theory here, if we had more square footage, you could do, well, let's do one more sample. So we're going to do a maximum density sample. Okay? We're going to go right over, where are we? We're going to go right over here, Molokoa. Okay? Average lot size is around,
7,500.
no, they're bigger than that. Molokoa phase 15. It's about, I think they're about 10,000 square foot lots. And they're pretty standard rectangular shape, okay? Typically we see a house somewhere near the front of the property with a relatively short driveway because concrete costs money. And that's an inexpensive way to build. Okay, we are on sewer. So we have water out. Okay, water in. We do have some water in issues in Lihue that we're, again, working to resolve. But let's say we have the water for this. So let's say we have enough water to add another water meter, okay? So we have 2 water meters. So a water meter, to add a water meter is gonna, the FRC, which is a Facilities Resource Charge, and the idea for this is that this is what monies that the water department uses to create new source and new delivery, okay? So water is a public trust asset. And what that means is that it's there for everybody. It's there for everyone's use and consumption. The Board of Water Supply does not sell you water. They sell you water delivery. That's all they're allowed to charge you for. So they don't charge you for water. They charge you for the delivery of that gallon of water. They cannot charge you for the water itself, okay? Because you already own it. It's already our water, right? So FRC charge $14,800, another $2,000 to install it, $16,800 roughly. Depending on the installation, it could run up to about $20,000 just for your second water meter. But in this particular case, so we're going to call this the house. And we can, let's say this is a 3-bed, okay? Then let's say we add another house. And this is going to be an ADU. And let's say this house is, these are typically about 1,200 square feet. Let's say we add another 1,200 square foot, one back here. Because we're on sewer, this can be a 3-bedroom, and that can be a 3-bedroom, right? We don't have to stick to the 5-bedroom rule because we're not on a septic system. And what we said, this was 10,000 square foot lot. That's a symbol for square foot, right? Yeah. Square with a foot symbol through it. Okay. We can also add on this property, we can also add ARUs. ARU.
So what about the parking?
So now we've got, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. That's part of the code. That's part of the code. We can fit 4 units on there, okay? this is 1,200 square feet. Let's say we don't have any concrete. We did a gravel driveway, and we did a gravel driveway. So all we have is the footprint of our houses, 12, 12. Let's max these out. Let's make them 2 bedrooms. And let's go to 800 square feet. And let's do this one as a 2 bedroom with 800 square feet.
6,000 square feet. Under roof.
Huh?
6,000 under roof.
Well, we're at 4,000, right? 8, that's 2,000 and 2,000, 4,000 under.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
4,000 under roof.
Yeah.
We've got the roof. We're probably right about pushing the limits on our lot coverage ratios. So we're probably pushing right up against 50%. But because we have ARUs, it's no longer 50, right? ARU, you get a 10% bonus. 60%. Oh boy, my handwriting's bad. This is maximum density. So if you have water and sewer and lot coverage ratios, the maximum density on an R4 zone property can be as many as 4 units. Limitations. Can you CPR this property?
Yes.
Yes. How many CPRs do you have? How many units?
4.
No.
2.
2. Okay, so you have 2 because you can CPR it like this or anything like similar to that. You could CPR it like that, right? We have 2 units because ARUs cannot be CPR'd off from their parent unit. Now, do these have to be attached? No, we can have these detached. So this could be a 2-bedroom house and a 3-bedroom house and a 2-bedroom house and a 3-bedroom house. Lot coverage ratios are issue there. When you separate the houses, you get a little bit more lot coverage because of the eaves. So having them attached actually helps you with lot coverage related issues, right, Dougie?
Yeah.
Not much.
Depends on the wall line.
Yeah.
What is considered the wall
Yeah.
line. But,
You could also go vertical. You could put your ARU on top of your house, on top of your carport. Your limitation is your setbacks, right? We have 5, 10, 5, and, I'm sorry, this is 15. This is 10. And then if your plate height, if you go to a 2nd story, 10 feet back from the sides, right?
They may allow you only one driveway approach.
They do only allow you one driveway approach. Absolutely right. Thank you, Doug. Thanks for bringing that up. So they only want you to have one ingress and egress from your property. This is usually a shared element. And so what you'll typically see is something like this. So you'll have one access to the roadway, and this will access this house, and then there'll be a separate driveway that comes off. And this portion of it may be a common element that you both share. Actually, this whole portion here will be a common element that you both share and both have responsibility for maintaining, as well as the sewer hookup and stuff like that.
I just want to add that CPRs take forever.
They do.
I mean, it's painful.
Yeah. So you have to hire so first you got to hire a surveyor. A surveyor's got to come in and measure everything, put all these stakes out, and then that survey goes to an attorney. An attorney drafts the corporate documents because it's a corporate agreement. Okay. Then those documents go up to a Wahoo for initial review. Then they go to the real estate commission, which doesn't make any sense to me, but it goes to the real estate commission, right? And the real estate commission then takes time and reviews it, and then hopefully stamps an approval on it. There are lots of CPRs out there where there is no density on one of the units. So be cautioned about that if you're out looking at a CPR'd property. Actually, there was one that was just listed up in, what's that one, the cut in the hill? As you go up Lawai? Akimama. Up Akimama Road, there's a CPR up there. I think, I don't remember if it's a 3 or 4 unit CPR. The one CPR unit that's left, it's a big lot. It's a 3-acre lot. It's ag zoned. There's no housing density left for it. They use the housing density on the other lots. And so it has no housing density. So you got to look for those. You could put an ag structure on it. There's no residences allowed on the property.
So the ARU is not affordable, does not necessarily have to be affordable?
So a common mistake is that we say this is an affordable rental unit, and it's not. It's an additional rental unit. Again, the 5 bills that were introduced this last Wednesday do make proposals to give you incentive to make those affordable by reducing or completely waiving fees. And even if that doesn't pass, and you do make an ARU and you do conform to the county's affordability requirements, you can get a reduction on your real property tax rate.
Yeah, you should try to change that.
She should try to change that.
She should try to change that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the purpose of one of the main purposes.
Yeah.
It needs to be
We need affordable rentals, but we need market rate rentals as well, because there are people who are in affordable rentals who should be in market rates because they don't necessarily have to requalify every year. A lot of people don't know that. When you live in an affordable rental, if you get in, not all programs require that you annually requalify for that. So it may be that you moved into the property 10 years ago and now you're making pretty good money. And hey, the rent's cheap here, why should I move? And the rental market is starting to loosen up. But it's been super, the last 5 years, it has been so tight that if you've got a place and your landlord's not trying to sell it out from underneath you, everyone's kind of staying put because we have no inventory.
That's just the point.
Yeah.
I think it should be affordable.
Well, I think that it would be great, yeah.
Personal thing.
Well, I think we need all of it. To make it financially feasible, the reason why I don't think they limited it to affordability was because they wanted to make it financially feasible to add one of these units. Average cost for construction right now, what I'm hearing from contractors is about $200 a square foot. So if you add an 800 square foot ARU to your property, you're looking at $160,000 for the ARU, plus another $20,000 for the water, plus. So you get up to about
4 meters or 2 meters?
2.
On that example.
So the water department's not real clear yet with the ARUs, if they're going to require you to add another meter. Right now, they're kind of saying no, because it's an accessory to the existing structure, and it cannot exist without the main structure. But the water board has been a little difficult to pin down on things like that. They like their flexibility. They like to change the rules on us.
If I'm the developer, I can put in my own private meter on the line so that I know how much they.
A sub-meter? Yeah, you can absolutely sub-meter. Yeah.
Electricity, anything.
Yeah,
You can
so-
sub-
You can sub-meter.
So that would be the only.
Explain if the bills pass, it's going through county council now. If those bills pass, what would be the effect on the FRC for people?
None.
Sorry. Depends on water department.
Water department. So the council has no authority over the board of water.
So if the water department amends, it could go from, 14 some odd.
Yeah, I think it's 14.8, and they're proposing to take it down to 4,000. Yeah, and I think there's some negotiation in trying to get them to, well, the proposal, I think one of the bills that was proposed looked at having a loan come from the Affordable Housing Special Fund, so that would help pay for that, and that if you kept your unit as an affordable rental for a certain period of time, that loan would be forgiven over time. But that if you didn't stay in compliance with the affordability requirement, then you had to repay that loan back to the affordable housing. So that's a way they're giving incentive to build the unit, but also then to help you reduce the cost. Because at the end of the day, this needs to be built, but at the end of the day, there's only so many people who can afford to build it without getting the revenue to come in to support it. And that's part and parcel, right? Is we want it right now, if no one builds them, oh well, right? We don't get any rentals. So market rate rentals are better than no rentals. It'd be great if everyone built them as affordable and could rent them as affordable, but really we need more rentals. So the greater supply we have, the lower the pressure is on upward pricing pressure.
I still disagree, but.
Okay. I accept that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments?
I got one.
Yeah.
On the guest cottage transition, since you're adding in a kitchen, so the actual structure will be called a studio?
It will be, they're changing the definition
Right.
of a guest cottage. The bill that's proposed, so this is Bill 27, what is it? 2735. So the bill as it was originally written, and my understanding is that it is being changed by the Planning Commission. So it's not going to come back up to council looking like it did going into Planning Commission. But the bill actually doesn't create new ordinance. All it does is change the definition of what a guest house is, saying that it can have a kitchen and saying that it can be rented. So that's all it changes, is the definition. There's no CZO about it. It is merely it's like a 3-line definition change.
So there's no name change?
Nope.
That's part of.
It's, they changed it. It's, no,
It's in the definition clause.
that's what they're changing. They're changing the definition in the CZO,
So what's the name of the unit?
a guest house.
Yes, the state, they keep it the same.
They're keeping the name the same, and they're changing what
You're gonna
it,
have a guest house with 2 different units.
no, you're gonna give a guest house, and the new meaning will mean that it can have a kitchen. They're still limiting it to 500 square feet. Nothing else is changing. They're just saying, yes, you can have a kitchen, and yes, you may long-term rent it. You may not short-term rent them, even if you are in a VDA.
But if you have a guest house on an ag piece of property, then it wouldn't be the same
What
definition.
is this thing?
It is, same definition, because a guest house is a guest house.
But there'll be some help in the health department as you leave the bathroom to the kitchen. There might be some things you might have to change with the health department.
Yeah, State Department of Health is going to have to come up with their rules for this after. So if you convert an existing one, I don't know that there's anything they're going to be able to affect on it. It's the creation of a new one where it may be interesting because they're probably going to consider it an accessory dwelling unit, and that will almost certainly trigger an upgrade to a septic system. Yeah.
My understanding when we went through it is that it was only gonna apply to the existing ones. There's like 400 units roughly that are out there. It wouldn't be a new ordinance for building more guest house, because a guest house is basically the same thing as an additional rental unit. So it's basically just kind of working backwards and saying, okay, if you got one, go ahead and throw a kitchen in there, something to cook on, because we know you're doing it anyway. And rather than feeling like you're growing papalolo when you put your head down, you're gonna be okay. But it's not like creating something to move forward. I bring that joke up because that's what people feel like. They feel like they're breaking the law just to sleep at night.
And from a real estate perspective, what we do see is sometimes when we go into a property, when someone's mom and dad have passed away, there's 3 or 4 kids who have moved all over the place, they're gonna sell off the family property, and there are unpermitted units on the property. They can be challenging, if not impossible, to finance. And so some of these ordinances will help those families by giving them an avenue by which to bring them into compliance, and therefore make a marketable property where we can get permits for the rental unit that was added to the property for junior or grandma to live in or whatever. So hopefully this is not just a path towards additional density, but it's also a path to making some of the unpermitted density that we have turn into permitted density and make those houses, because a lot of those houses are our most affordable properties, right? These are some of our lowest hanging fruits, and if they can't be financed, then the people who need to buy them can't buy them, and the people who need to sell them can't sell them. And so this really helps give us a path forward so we can help clients get the properties into conforming status so we can get them financed.
So Milo is to appraise out basically to get the.
So yeah, the appraisal is the big limiting factor. And I mean, VA, FHA are the tightest on that, right? They're not going to allow a lot of unpermitted. FHA's loosened up. I think VA is the tightest. Conventional, depending on your lender, right? If it has unpermitted square footage, some conventional lenders will just say, we're going to appraise everything except for the unpermitted square footage. And if that appraises for the value, you're fine. If it doesn't appraise for the value, because the unpermitted additions are what creates a lot of additional value, like a second unit and the rental income from that unit, you may not get your appraisal there. But on conventional loans, other conventional lenders don't care if it's permitted or not. They say, hey, it's worth this much. we'll end on it. So, but that's part of the goal, is to get it all so that we can get them financed, because financing is how we all buy properties. So that's,
How long does it take to get the permits?
to get the permits, so we're working on that too. We're working on that too. Yeah, that can take time. The CPR process takes time. Let's see, I think Luke got his ARU permitted in probably 6 months. Probably didn't hurt that he got elected. I'm gonna be honest.
In my home,
Yeah.
I bought it as it is. We buy
Yep.
cash.
Okay.
And there is a room, a studio,
Uh-huh.
it's not permitted.
So you can go through.
Yeah, I
The,
would like
the
to
penalty is not stiff. It's like a $500 permit fee. That's the fine. It's a $500 fine. And in the grand scheme of things, that's nothing, right? To pay that little fine for that.
I can add a kitchen in there?
Yes, if you go through the permitting process. Now, the fine isn't the only part. You have to have plans drawn, and go get a card from Dougie,
Yeah.
because he can help you draw up plans inexpensively.
I didn't touch this in like a bit, I didn't touch because there's,
Yeah.
I can afford it right
Yeah.
now. And
He's not an architect, he's not an engineer, he's a draftsman, so he's a lot cheaper, but he can't stamp plans for you, but. Oh, what? Here, Doug. But,
2 months.
but you're gonna have to,
You know, I can't wait, I have been waiting.
to bring a property into conforming, if you have an unpermitted unit, you do have to have a plot plan drawn up, you have to have what's called as-built drawings done for the house, detailing where everything is and where the unpermitted stuff is, and then you have to have it inspected and brought up to. Yeah, yeah, a lot of people do. Yeah, you're not the only one. You're not the only, lots of them out there. But to get it to the point where down the line it can be sold to someone as an affordable thing, this gives you an avenue by which to do it. The permitting, it's going to take time to get your drawings done. It's going to take time to get your as-builts, all done up, your survey and all that stuff done up, and then go in for the permitting fee. And then it has to be walked around to all the different departments. They all have a little checkbox they have to go through. So 6 months, maybe 9 months, you probably get it done.
Oh, okay. It's not
Yeah.
that long.
Yeah. Yeah, I asked Luke if he could come tonight to talk about his actual experience. Unfortunately, I think he's going to a class on the mainland. So, yeah, he's in San Francisco, so he couldn't come tonight. But I think his cost like $20,000? $30,000 to do a convert. He upgraded as well, so that wasn't just permits and stuff, and fees. That was upgrading his unit. He did a really nice job upgrading his unit as well. Other questions? Yeah.
So water seems to be an issue. Kilauea, Lihue, Punamalu. Where on the island doesn't have a water issue?
Oh, Habakapa, I live in Kapaa.
There's good source and good transmission in Kapaa, but there's very limited sewer. Yeah, there's a very limited sewer. Yes, they're probably gonna require you to upgrade your, yeah. So add another 30,000 to that. Sorry. Yeah.
I think the big issue is parking, like in the example.
Oh, I forgot to cover that, I'm sorry, yeah.
Parking is, I think, a very big
Right.
limiting factor.
So we have 2 off-street parking for the house. There, in the ordinance, it calls for 1 parking for the ARU, regardless of how many bedrooms. It could be a studio, it could be a 2-bedroom, you're only required 1 off-street parking for it. The ADU requires 2 off-street parking, and this ARU requires another one. And what's the square footage, Doug? It's like 10 by 20, the off-street parking size that you need to.
Average size would be 9 by 18.
So that's what you're required to set aside on your property as a designated parking spot.
But realistically, you have to be able to back out of that flag lot to be able to come out. So it seems like you would probably have almost your entire lot coverage either with.
Parking is not required to be paved. It can be a porous surface.
So even if the water gets in, I'm just saying, when you look at that piece of property,
Yeah.
and we see them in Kilauea and different places where pretty much the whole yard is covered with cars.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a social concern to some communities. So are you saying that the desire in Lihue is to create that level of density. I mean, I'm not.
So
complaining,
let me tell you what so
especially if they're on the road, the
I'm gonna-
fire can't get through.
I'm going to change my hat, okay? So 10 years driving ambulance. I'm not talking about this theoretically. I've actually been down these streets and turned around. That's not really a big issue.
No?
No, we can manage just about anything, even in the engines. It's not a huge issue.
Okay.
I've never had a problem, ever. Not once. So here's the bigger thing, right? Right now, we have this same property, and we have one 3-bedroom house. How many people are living in it? 10.
Oh, okay, all right, sure.
And we still have cars.
Yeah, okay, I understand that.
So
That's
which
my-
social issue are you dealing with? Are you dealing with the issue of 10 people living in 1,200 square feet? Or are we dealing with the cars parked on the property? So my theory is that we need housing for these people because living in a condensed space, people sleeping 3 or 4 to a bedroom, and yes, this is reality, this is not a fable. This is all over the place in Lihue, Hanamalu, Hanapepe, Eliele, I see it all over the place. Is it better to have that with all the same number of cars? Because there's still the same number of people living there. Or should we have more housing so that people aren't on top of each other, they aren't driving each other crazy, domestic issues?
Well, I'm not the one you have to argue with. I just know that, like, as I listen to people, you know, I'm compassionate to where I would like people to have, you know, a little bit of space where they have their housing, right? I don't have a challenge with that. But there are people who are bitterly attached to not increasing the density.
I think they should get over their bitterness because being bitter in general is bad for you. Be happy. Be a happy person. Being bitter is, it's a waste of energy being bitter. Okay, we're not going to get into a political debate here because I'm not on council, she is. If you want to argue with her, go argue with her. I want happy people living in houses. That's what I'm looking for. And I want you to build an ARU, ADU, or guest house, and so does the county.
Question.
Yes.
I live in a subdivision that is older,
Okay.
so there's a lot of the homes where there's older people, maybe one person living alone. They block off the house and they stay in the living room and that's it, because they don't want to clean the rest. There's like a community park that's like this stupid triangle doing absolutely nothing that was put in when they built the subdivision.
Uh-huh.
What I hear from the elderly people is they would be happy to move out of the big house because they don't want to take care of it, but they don't want to leave their community. So can we take the little community park and build 1-bedrooms or studios for the elderly so they can move out of their house, free up their house,
Yeah.
and they can still be in the
And you're getting into political debate, and I have my perspective about parks and urban density. As a city grows,
That's worse.
I'm gonna disagree with you because as a city grows, if you go to Tokyo or Osaka, you go to cities that have really high density, the importance of having a park in the middle of the urban jungle.
But it's not urban.
Yet.
Yes.
We're not planning for tomorrow. We're not planning for 10 years from now. Planners plan 50 years down the road. So it's important that we maintain our parks and we don't lose those open spaces because over time, everything else will fill up. And so we've got our deputy parks director back here. And there are we do have a plethora of parks and there may be selective parks that are, how should we say, I mean, Puhi has 3 parks that are really close together, right? A lot of open space. Is one of those parks superfluous? Maybe. But in general, the cautionary tale about taking parks and converting them into housing is that then we lose our future open space. And the CZO calls for setting aside park space within communities for exactly the reason of we need to maintain some open space in our urban cores. So it's this balance between housing, open space, even in the urban environment.
Question. Could grandma potentially do a walk-off and make an ARU on top of that house?
You don't need to add a bedroom. You don't need to add anything. If you have if this is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and we take the master suite and we turn it into a studio, and we take a door and we take a window and we turn it into a door, now she's got her studio. And she can rent out, or the rest of her family could live in the rest of the unit. that is an ARU. So we don't have to add new space. We can take existing space and convert it into a second unit.
Do you need two exits per?
There is some fire code requirements. I don't know them, unfortunately. I don't know all of them. But the fire department has a prevention crew that goes through the egress issues. Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you very much for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. Feel free to email me if you want. I'd be happy to look at your property and give you any recommendations.